Hello, YouTube! Scott here with another instant review for Marvel's What If. So, the newest episode, episode 4, is called What If Doctor Strange Lost His Heart Instead of His Hands? And I gotta admit, when I first saw the title, I thought it actually made a lot of sense. I mean, in the Marvel Prime timeline, as I like to call it, the only casualty or damage Doctor Strange seemed to inflict when he was in that car accident was that his hands got broken. So it did make sense to me that maybe he'd suffered damage to his heart, and that was what the episode was about. But that's not it. It turned out this is a really thought-provoking episode with themes of love and loss and the depths people will sink to in their grief just to not feel that way anymore. You know, back in WandaVision, Vision said, "What is grief but love persevering?" Well, Doctor Strange's love really persevered in this one. And the voice talents were great because they got, everybody from the movies, quite literally. Benedict Cumberbatch, Rachel McAdams, Benedict Wong, Tilda Swinton. Even, there was a small cameo from Christine Eberhardt, the reporter from the first Iron Man movie, and they got Leslie Bibb. And of course, Jeffrey Wright as the Watcher, and he narrated the whole thing. I gotta say, there's this one thing with the animation style that I'm not really into. They use just the simple slash on the cheek to delineate the cheekbone, but it makes it look like the characters have scars on their cheeks. I first noticed it back in the second episode with T'Challa. So, the animation is but the storyline is great, and it's almost Twilight Zone-esque. Okay, so get this, okay? So, the change from the Marvel Prime timeline, as I will continue to call it, is that when Doctor Strange had the accident that set him on his path, Christine Palmer was in the car with him, and she died in the accident. And it was his grief over that, instead of losing the use of his hands as a surgeon, that led Doctor Strange to eventually study the mystic arts, become the Sorcerer Supreme, defeat Dormammu, become guardian of the Eye of Agamotto, the Time Stone. But through it all, he was still grieving for Christine. So one night, exactly 2 years later, he's sitting in the Sanctum Sanctorum, and Wong's trying to get him to stop living in the past for a while and just go have a drink with him. But instead, Doctor Strange puts himself into a time loop. He goes back to the night of the accident, and he tries to do things differently, but Christine still dies. And he does this over and over and over again. It's like if Groundhog Day had been written with the worst possible endings. And eventually, he's visited by an incarnation of the Ancient One, even though she should be dead at this point, who tells him that Christine's death is what is known as an absolute point in time. Seems like a little bit of a ripoff from Doctor Who here, because in Doctor Who they have fixed points in time that can't be changed. Well, apparently Christine's death can't be changed no matter what happens. Unfortunately, Doctor Strange has been studying some things, and he thinks there might be a way to reverse an absolute point in time. The Ancient One doesn't want him to do that, of course, and attempts to blast him with energy, but he manages to get away. He finds himself in a lost ancient library, where he finds that it is possible, but the amount of power that he would need to do it is just phenomenal. So he starts summoning these evil-looking magical creatures and absorbing their power and kind of absorbing them, because afterwards he tends to kind of look like whatever creature he summons. And he keeps doing this over and over for centuries, absorbing the power that he needs to reverse this absolute point. But there's a little wrinkle here, because as it turns out, there's another Doctor Strange. See, let's see, what's the best way to do this? There was a point back in the past when, instead of using the time stone for the first time, he decided to just put it down and go have a drink with Wong. The Ancient One split Doctor Strange into these two different versions of himself so that they're both in the same timeline. And it does become essentially a battle of good versus evil, because the good Doctor Strange, leaves the Sanctum at one point and finds reality like falling apart without him, like turning into ink, kind of like stuff did in Epic Mickey, the video game. And unfortunately, his other, let's call him the evil self, has realized that the two of them need to come together again for him to have enough power to reverse an absolute point in time. And there's a battle at the site of Christine's death where they're battling back and forth. Even their capes fight. Unfortunately, Evil Doctor eventually gets the upper hand, and the two Stranges merge. And he manages to reverse that absolute point, and Christine comes back to life. But not only does Doctor Strange look like a twisted amalgam of all the creatures he's absorbed over the centuries, but reality still falls apart around him. He tries to save it with his magic, but he can't. He even calls out to the Watcher, whose presence he had sensed, but the Watcher can't help him any more than he could save himself. And despite all of his efforts, Christine still fades away. And Doctor Strange is left alone in his own little pocket dimension. Yeah, this one had easily the saddest ending. But, I mean, wouldn't we all go that far for somebody we love that much if we had the power? So, like, you can doubt his motives, but you probably would have done the same thing if you could. Let's not kid around. So they're getting into some really serious stuff on the show, and I don't know about you guys, but I'm definitely ready for episode 5. Like, I don't even know, how do you up the stakes from this? The guy destroyed his own universe. But I mean, I guess we'll find out, right? So, until next time, I've been Scott, and this has been Opinions No One Cares About. Everyone has opinions. This one was mine.